Thank you very much. There's been an astonishing lack of transparency by the government ahead of the dud deal that they look set to agree next week, and that was personified by the Paymaster General, who refused to engage on any of the substantive issues. And the briefing suggests that they are preparing a deal, to sign a deal, putting the UK back into the EU's regulatory and political orbit. And anyone listening to the debate will have heard ministers repeatedly refuse to deny that the government is preparing to make the UK a rule taker once again. And one of the frustrations when we were negotiating the trade and cooperation agreement was the EU refused to back a veterinary agreement based on regulatory equivalence. Given our record and our commitment to high SPS standards, this was clearly the common sense approach. But the EU simply refused to engage. Instead, it's imposed higher costs and regulation falling on businesses and consumers. And now, extraordinarily, it seems that this government is simply just going to roll over and concede that the UK will have to follow EU rules over which it has no say, and also bring back ECJ jurisdiction. This isn't necessary, desirable, or consistent with a democratic vote to leave the EU and restore our sovereignty. And once again, let's see if the Minister will actually rule it out when he speaks. And having spent 3 years in the Ministry of Defence advising the then Defence Secretary, I'm concerned that the approach the government is looking to take on defence and security. NATO is the cornerstone of our defence, and it's the alliance that should be our focus. Yet a leak reveals the deal will pull the UK into the EU's common defence and security policy, duplicating many of the functions and institutions of NATO. And for what? A deal that doesn't even guarantee British firms access to this rearmament fund. Instead, that will be subject to future separate negotiations where the UK will have to pay. How much on what terms is completely unclear, and it's very disappointing, given the need to defend our continent, that some in the EU want to link access to defence programmes to fishing rights, and once again the government has simply rolled over. And I know from my time, France indeed, I know from my time in the Cabinet Office and Number 10 working on Brexit issues, the EU were determined to be inflexible from the start. Michel Barnier, the negotiator, embodied that rigidness. And unlike the man from Del Monte, he delighted in saying no. So there are improvements to the CTA that can be made. The agreement provides for that precisely and deliberately in the review mechanism. There are easements that the EU could easily agree to get trade flowing, benefiting businesses and consumers. But instead of pursuing those from a position of principle, this government is negotiating a backroom deal that looks set to do so badly and undermine our national interest.